One of the most political elections we've ever seen, one of the dirtiest elections we've ever seen, incredible race baiting going on, and one of the most critically important we've ever seen, because even if a lot of these Republicans that are about to be voted in are globalist, the amount of anger and the major political realignment that this signifies, with early voting numbers coming out showing Republicans have a 10% lead, that's a big deal. We're going to be breaking that down coming up here in just a few minutes. First off, though, I don't want her within 3 feet of anyone. Governor threatens to arrest Ebola nurse after she defied quarantine to go for a bike ride and order pizza. So they're arresting people that defy quarantine in Africa. They're not bringing people into other African countries that have treated Ebola patients or who have it until they pass quarantine. But here, we can't do that. And this nurse, who it turns out worked for the CDC, is so arrogant and going on the news via Skype all over the place, saying she'll do whatever she wants. What happens when other people come in contact with Ebola patients and perhaps have it, and then they decide to just run around? Why did this other nurse in Dallas treating Ebola patients get sick and call the CDC, and they said, go ahead and fly? And then she had Ebola, and Lord knows what she did on that airplane. The stuff spreads through the air. The CDC admits that. National News pointed it out, so they pulled that off their website today. Maine governor vows to use full extent of authority on Ebola nurse. Maine Governor LePage vowed last night to use the full extent of his authority in response to a nurse who has treated Ebola patients in Sierra Leone after she left her home in Maine and took a bicycle ride despite a quarantine order. LePage said his office had been in talks overnight Wednesday to work out a legal deal for the nurse who has tested negative for Ebola. Will spend the remaining time until November 10th, the period that the state has ordered her to remain at her home as she waits out the virus, minimum 21-day incubation period. Here's another headline out of France 24. Flu or Ebola? U.S. hospitals prepare for a confusing season. Yes, this is what's going to add to the panic. And then we have the confirmed reports from doctors and Border Patrol that people are being disappeared that appear to have Ebola. We don't know if they have Ebola. What we know is they are being disappeared. The hospitals that we fingered will not respond, will not deny. What's that tell you? And we talked to the doctor that blew the whistle up in Missouri. He talks to the doctors at the, and the nurses there at the Harry Truman Center, and they go, no, it's all true, you're absolutely right, but we're scared. And then at the hospitals that he runs, he's been totally ostracized. Doctors, nurses won't even talk to him. All because he did his Hippocratic oath and said, hey, they're disappearing people in the middle of the night. And then we confirmed it from a major Dallas doctor. You add to that our exclusive story that a major shipping company is delivering with 18-wheelers as we speak from their cache on the East Coast $250,000 $1,000+ hazmat suits to the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth area. $250,000. And they admit they've ordered over 1 million total. And then Obama comes out yesterday, and we played the clip twice, and says there may be more Ebola cases. Just get ready for that. So they're waiting till after the election to announce more Ebola cases. I think it's overwhelmingly clear. Or they may be able to cover it up with the people they've been snatching. But regardless of this being real Ebola or panicking by the government, it should be a news item that people are disappearing. That's the kind of thing you get a Pulitzer Prize for. Where's the New York Times? Where's the Washington Post? Well, the fire departments, the police departments around the country were told 2 months ago, do not use the word Ebola over the radio. Hospitals were told, don't tell anybody if there's an Ebola case. So see, that's how the secrecy begins. And then, oh, don't tell anybody if we bring an Ebola patient here. And then the CDC puts out on their website, oh, yes, it is airborne up to 3 feet. They take that down. So what you have is a cover-up. We know a cover-up's going on. We know some of what they're covering up, but we're about an inch deep in what I think is a very, very deep reservoir that we have to swim down to the bottom of to find out what's happening. And I never claimed that we were the total cutting edge of so-called journalism. What I do is just go off research, analysis, and what's already known. What is publicly available, public intelligence. Meanwhile, Breitbart's reporting Spanish intelligence has intercepted a plot to weaponize Ebola. Well, no kidding. I mean, what do you think ISIS and others are going to do? They're going to try to go into hospitals where people have Ebola, or they're going to try to go to these African countries, get sick, start incubating, and get on airplanes. But they don't need to, because we have the doctor in New York. The police have said he's a liar, and that he did get on the subway in the most busy time of day, and he went to restaurants and bowling alleys and taxi cabs. Gee, oh, by the way, when he was sick, you're a medical doctor, you come back from Doctors Without Borders, an own CIA front, though they do some real work. Some of the doctors in there aren't agents. And he returns back and then just starts racing around everywhere he can when he has a fever. And now they say he's moved into stage 2. That's the bleeding and the rest of it. Ebola doctor lied about New York City travels, New York Post. That's according to the NYPD. So we're seeing a real pattern here of these nurses and doctors just running around doing whatever they want. Is there one nurse that isn't running around? Is there one doctor that isn't running around? Will we catch one of these doctors next to the playground spitting on the monkey bars where kids are swinging? It seems like they're going over the top to spread this. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they're just stupid. Maybe they're just dumb. Or maybe they're not really sick. Maybe this is a psyop. I mean, there's real Ebola in Africa. Clearly, it's a real disease. Clearly, there's mystery illnesses with hundreds of kids dying every month now, tens of hundreds on respirators, just all sorts of bizarre deaths all over the place. And the media is so controlled, like the three monkeys, see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing, that pretty much anything could go on. That's when I got concerned in January of this year, when in the 2-month period I'd lost 3 family members, and the doctors and nurses at the big medical center there in Tyler, Texas, were telling me, no, it's some kind of mystery illness. It's a combination of resistant viruses and just regular bacteria that just can't be killed and all sorts of other weird stuff, and it's a cocktail, and there are just people dying all over the place, and we can't take more people, and all the other hospitals can't take more people. And you'd find little local news articles here and there around the country. Mystery illness causes 4 deaths at the hospital this week. Next week, mystery illness claims 10 more. Introvirus D68 or flu. How do you know what your child has? Flu questions of the week. Well, when you go into most doctors' offices now, this has happened to me repeatedly with pediatricians. I've gone to different places, and because the guy I had was really good, but he retired. And I'll say, yeah, my child has 101 fever and everything. And they'll just kind of look down their throat and everything. Okay, here's some antibiotics. Here's a prescription. And I go, wait a minute. When I go to the clinic that I go to, because the guy's friends with my dad, well, it's a big clinic, but the owners are friends with my dad, so I know it's a good place. My dad said it was a great place, and it has been. I've been going there for like 15 years. They don't give me antibiotics. They make me cough in a cup, or they swab my leg when I had an infection, and then I had to wait a day in excruciating pain, and they called back and said, this is what it is. You've got 2 drug-resistant bacteria, 1 strep and 1 staph, and we're going to put you on 2 different hardcore antibiotics. Don't drink when you're on these. These will hurt your liver. But this stuff's so hard to knock out. Are you ready? You don't give people antibiotics, ladies and gentlemen, without testing and finding out. It's pointless when you got a virus. And people said, oh, it's racism that the first Ebola patient who knew he had Ebola and ran over here and gave it to people in Dallas. Remember Jesse Jackson? No responsibility. It's just racism. You rob a bank, it's racism. You mug somebody, it's racism. Everything is somebody else's fault. Well, he went into the hospital, and they didn't even test him. They just said, oh, here's some antibiotics. And he had Ebola. But that wasn't, like Jesse Jackson said, because they were racist. It's because they're inept and they don't care at most of these facilities. That's what's going on. And, you know, Jesse Jackson's right in a way. This Ebola patient, you know, patient 0, you notice he's the only one that's died of all these white doctors they're bringing in here. Thomas Eric Duncan. That was his name. He's the only person that's died here of Ebola. 70% of people that get it die in Africa, sometimes 90%. But the only person that's died is a black guy. I was the black folks out there, I would be really concerned about this Ebola. There have been a lot of white folks die from it. But if you look at the numbers, maybe 20%, which is still an incredible kill rate. But if you're black, in fact, we have a lot of new listeners, and people probably don't believe it. Will you cue up that documentary, and we'll show the article from the mid-'90s when they declassified that they developed airborne weapons?